Hi, I'm Joan Neuberger, editor of Not Even Past, and today our guests are two collection specialists from the Harry Ransom Center, Jean Cannon and Elizabeth Garver. Hi, Jean. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. Thanks for having us. Thanks.
Oh, I'm so excited that we're doing something really different this month. We're featuring a historical exhibit at the Harry Ransom Center, one of UT's great historical archives, literary and historical archives. And this month, or really all spring, Jean and Elizabeth have curated an exhibit on World War I. So we're going to be talking about the exhibit and how a lot of teaching takes place at the university, at all universities, not just in the classroom, but in museums and in other institutions. So maybe we could start with a description of the exhibit on World War I.
Certainly. Well, the Ransom Center is really known for its rich literary archives. So this exhibit, which gives the global perspective of this war, is sort of a historical tool, but also it gives this unique personal experience through the diaries and letters and manuscript drafts that are on display. And so you can see as you walk through the gallery how all the different nation states get drawn into this event. But we also have a lot of sections in the exhibition that are dedicated to sort of a thematic look at different subjects. So, for example, the role that censorship plays in the war, the changing roles of women in wartime. And so we tried to give a truly global perspective, but also focus on the personal experiences of people whose lives were so dramatically changed by this event.
Mm-hmm. So you somehow mix the global political with the individual experience of the war.
Absolutely.
And tell us a little bit about how you use archival materials in an exhibit to teach the public about a historical subject.
Well, it gets a little difficult because you have to get everybody's kind of on the same knowledge base. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we have to start a little bit early. So some parts of the exhibition start with the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, just to. So few Americans know how German and French animosity started, and other things. So there's that where you're actually having to get people to the same place so that they can go on, and then we actually. We chose events, obviously, the Battle of the Marne, the Somme, Verdun, and we chose documents and letters that really sort of personified those events and let the people who were living through them speak about what they were going through. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge, but when people realize that in this war, depending on how you count them, but 8,000 to 10,000 people were dying every single day of the war. Mm-hmm. And that's a figure that not a lot of Americans get their heads around. So,
yeah. Are there specific historical points that you want people to take away from the exhibit?
Well, we talk about how this war was unique, especially in the manner of technology. We have quite a large section on technology with some amazing photographs. But also at the end of the war, the end of the exhibition, we talk about the end of the war and the incredible loss there was. And we also have an item, we have a first edition of the peace treaty, so we get to talk about the end game of the war and then the realigning of European and Middle Eastern and African boundaries, which we're sort of still dealing with today. So it helps people to know like where these conflicts got started. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you have this giant archive. Was it difficult to choose materials, to sort through the materials?
It might have been the most difficult part. We always say we could have filled the gallery, over 3 times with any one section of the exhibition.
Did you make a decision at some point to focus on individual experience and look for letters and
I think,
photo albums?
Honestly, as we were researching and we were reading the letters and having emotional and intellectual responses to them, it just became clear that was what needed to be featured. Mm-hmm. But in conjunction with that, we also display, for example, propaganda posters, so that you can see what was actually on the train station wall, and so that helps to give sort of the mass perspective and the personal perspective, like equal play. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully you can really get inside of this experience, both on the personal level and on the historical level.
When you were looking through the archives, did you find anything that was totally unexpected that you were able to display?
The Christmas trees, why don't you talk about
Oh,
that?
yeah,
that was
yeah.
a late entry.
That was, something we found just sort of serendipitously. We noticed when we were talking with people about this exhibition before it actually went up that most Americans, if they know one thing about the First World War, they remember the Christmas truce, and it's when
The Christmas truce.
the Christmas truce, yeah. And
And what was that?
It was Christmas. Well, it happened twice actually, in 1914 and 1915. When Christmas Eve there was a truce called, and German troops and British troops, I think French troops as well, in some sectors, met in the middle of no man's land, and they traded coffee and cigarettes, and they played a football match. So it's this real moment of humanity in an otherwise, industrialized hell of warfare. But we found an eyewitness account that was written on the back of an envelope in one of our smaller collections, which I didn't even know about until we started working on this exhibition. So that was quite the find. Yeah.
And I'm a Russian historian, and I know that you have some fabulous Russian materials there that surprised me. There were some photo albums and things, Elizabeth. Could you talk about those a bit?
Yes, we have. I could have done half the gallery with the Russian material.
The whole gallery, if she's being
Of course,
truthful.
I love hearing that.
I know. We have this magnificent and little well-known archive of a British officer, George Nathaniel Nash, who was sent to Russia in January of 1917 to teach the Russians how to use these new British armaments they were sending them. The British were desperately trying to keep Russia in the war at this point, and not a lot of Americans know that more Russian troops died during this war than were killed on any other side of the war. So the photo album actually comes with a diary. He kept a diary, and he kept some wonderful ephemera as well. But he took pictures of the February Revolution, and we have his account. He was actually in Vladivostok during the October Revolution, but he had a lot of interesting things to say. They put him in prison after the Bolsheviks took over, and they were holding him hostage for a very high, I think the head of the Russian Navy. But we have quite a lot of material on the Eastern Front, which is not a front that's very well known in America.
Right, yeah. Let me ask you some personal questions. How did you end up working in the Harry Ransom Center? How did you end up becoming a collection specialist?
That's an interesting story. I actually started out early in my career. I was an archaeologist, an underwater archaeologist, and I studied in France for quite a bit and went to the Sorbonne and got a degree there, and decided to go to library school and came to Texas and started working in the Ransom Center in 2000, and I haven't left.
And in the middle of that, you started doing your PhD in history, right?
I did. I found this wonderful archive for A Home for Wayward Girls, and I knew I wanted to write a book about it. And I thought, well, I'll just get a degree while I'm doing it.
Why not? That's right. And Jean, what about you? How did you end up here?
Well, I actually did a PhD in the English department at UT, and my dissertation was on the subject of the British war poets. So I used a lot of the archives of Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon and Edmund Blunden to write my dissertation. And at the time, Oxford was putting together a digital archive, a digital repository of materials. So I worked for them, digging and digging and digging in the Ransom Center, working for them and doing some of my dissertation research. And so just as I was finishing up, the then director of the Ransom Center had decided that for the centenary of the outbreak of the war, that the Ransom Center would have an exhibition, and so he asked me to come on board to work on this project. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Is there anything? Are there any other materials in that we've talked about some special materials that are on exhibit? Is there anything else that's really special to you? Any particular item or area of the exhibit that you particularly find particularly moving, or really that you really learned something new from?
I don't know if there's something new, but I discovered the letters of a little-known French a poet named Sylvain Royer, and these letters were uncatalogued. And he was the most magnificent writer. And his first letter is actually in the exhibition. It's on his account of the Battle of the Marne, where he comes under fire for the first time. And he actually writes a very moving poem at the end of the letter, where he writes about a soldier being lost and buried in a field. And actually it ended up that that's what happened to him. And he was killed at the Battle of Verdun, and then his body was only found in 1928 and identified by his dog tags, and then reburied. But it was really moving to find a group of letters that hadn't been identified or looked at in almost 100 years.
Yeah.
And then it seemed to really capture the ordinary soldier's experience so well.
Absolutely.
And what about you, Jean? Is there anything?
Well, I have one particular pet project that I've been working on in conjunction with the exhibition, which is I've been working with the letters in the Wilfred Owen archive that have been censored, that have been redacted. So Wilfred Owen, who's a faithful correspondent with his family throughout his experience of the war, we have all his letters to his mother and his brothers, and his older brother Harold, right after the war, went through with India ink and marked out certain sections. So I've been working with a software developer at the University of Utah who has a new program called Retro Reveal, where you can take scans of redacted letters and decipher some of what is written on them. And it's a complicated process, which I haven't mastered yet, but we have been able to read some of the inked out sections, and it means a lot to me, because if you think about someone who, Owen, who was going through so much, and all he wanted was to be able to communicate with the people that loved him, and unfortunately, his brother, who was concerned about Owen's reputation, I think is why he did this, but he silenced him for all these years, and no one's ever read these letters in their true original form. So hopefully we can continue with that project and let the world know what he was actually talking about. Let him have the final say.
Yeah. Have you already uncovered some of this?
We've uncovered some, but it's a long process. And Harold, his brother, really did an overachieving job with the India ink. Yeah.
How long is the exhibit going to be up? How much longer will it be possible for people to come see it?
It'll be up until August 3rd.
And you also have some of the materials that are already digitalized. The propaganda posters are digitalized. Are there any other pieces of the exhibit that are online, that are available online?
Not yet. We're working to put together a site, a sort of web exhibition of materials, of select materials. But we do already have a site up where you can search through the posters, and also some posters that unfortunately we couldn't include. So there's bonus material there that's worth seeing.
And so the website then will continue the work of the exhibit, and that'll be available after the exhibit closes.
Yes.
Right?
We also have a series of lectures and films coming up as well. So that's
right.
Yeah.
And will the lectures be taped and posted, or?
I think they are.
Because a lot of our audience is local, but a lot of our audience just sees us online. So, so they will be able to hear some of the lectures.
Absolutely.
And
I think within a certain amount of time they can actually.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's really nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.